Okay, so now we're live on Facebook. So good evening, Mr. M. Good evening, Sir Philip. Good evening, IFNG. So now we are on the writing subtest of our OET lecture. So once again, let's welcome Sir Pheelyp Aytona from Niner. Hello, Sir Philip.
Yes. Hello, guys. So it's good to meet you guys here again. Last week we talked about the speaking part, the speaking subtest of the occupational English tests. Today, for the second part of the lecture series, we shall be talking about the writing subtest. Just like yesterday, just like last week, we clarified that though we understand that quite a lot of you are are part of this group because you wanted to prepare for the Ielts. For healthcare professionals like nurses, maybe, and doctors, the OET is a healthcare focused test that is an alternative way for you to prove that you are good enough in English to be trusted with people's lives. So let's have a quick show of hands for the people who are here in the 74 people, 75 people who are here. Sino dito nurse? 4 nurses here. Nurses. Can you put it in the chat, please? So that we can see. Yeah. Lots of nurses. Yeah, hello. Hi there. Who are not nurses? I think that's the better question. Sino dito hindi nurse? Not a nurse. Who is not a nurse here? Hello. Anyone? So you're all nurses here. Interesting. Well, since all of you are nurses here, it's important that you know what your options are. What's the difference between the writing subtests in the Ielts versus the writing subtests in the OET? I think you're familiar with the writing subtest in the Ielts, where you have 1 hour to do 2 things, writing task 1 and writing task 2. Where writing task 1 is, yes, it's broad. Your writing task 1 for academic is report writing. You're given either numerical or graphical data, and you're supposed to make a report out of it. And your writing task 2, you're going to be writing an essay, give your opinion regarding a certain topic. It's broad. It can be about globalization. It can be about agriculture, Jupiter. On the other hand, dito sa OET, the difference is it's healthcare focused. It's based on things that you encounter at work. Because when you think about it, if you're going to be going to another English-speaking country, primarily because of the professional skills that you can contribute to their society. Therefore, yung pinaka-importante na klase ng English is yung itsura ng English mo, yung klase ng English na meron ka sa trabaho. Diba? And that is what the OET measures. What is your English like when it comes to the situations that matter? And that is why more and more countries, like literally more and more countries and institutions, are accepting the OET as proof of your ability to function with a language. Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, the UK, Namibia, Singapore, more and more countries. So therefore, this is something. So tonight could be like a sort of orientation regarding paano ba yung writing sa OET. Let's have a quick look for the next 2 hours. So let's discuss. So writing in the OET lasts for 45 minutes. This 45 minutes is divided into 2. The first 5 minutes, and then the remaining 40 minutes. During the first 5 minutes, you are not allowed to do anything except to read. And what is it that you read? What you read here are what are things called case notes. Type case notes. Hello, everyone who's here. Hello, hello. Type case notes, please. Case notes. Case notes, yes. Case notes para siyang chart. They give you information regarding the patients. What do you know so far regarding this person? These case notes are going to be profession specific. If you're a doctor, you're gonna get doctor case notes. If you're a PT, a physiotherapist, you will get PT case notes as well. If you're a nurse, you get nurse case notes. So it's very reassuring that the situation, the clinical situations, the patient situations that you will be provided are situations that would be familiar to you, whatever area it is that you're currently at right now. For example, area reveal. No? Where are you working right now? NICU, PICU, ICU, OR, DR, community, school, company. I see endoscopy. I see ER. I see ER again. Onco. A very sad one. MOT. What's MOT? Ano yun? NICU, dialysis. Isolation. Ingat ka dyan. Optha, ICU, CQ. School, we have a school nurse. General ward. COVID, ICU, OR, community, cardio. Main operating theater. Sila na. Social naman. Main operating theater. ICU, med-surg, emergency medical service. Mabilis ang galaw-galaw. Yeah. So as I said, it's very comforting. It's very comforting that, yes, Kaylee, it's very comforting that what you did, that whatever area you're at, hemodialysis, ICU, ER, etc., that neurosurgical and neurocritical care units, wherever you're working right now, as long as you're a nurse, you went through the 4 years, kahit hindi mo kabisado yung mga situations, they will be somewhat familiar to you. Now, after the 5 minutes you're done, and you will be informed, may pa sound check sila, sound check, meron silang announcements when the 5 minutes are done. And there's going to be a dambuhalang projection ng timer in front of you. When the 5 minutes are done, you now have 40 minutes to write. You have 40 minutes to write. And what do you write? Here in the OET, what you write is a letter. Everyone, type letter. Everyone, type letter. Letter. Galaw-galaw. Yeah, letter. It's a handover letter. It's essentially an endorsement letter from you, the nurse, if you're a nurse, to another member of the healthcare team. You're writing a letter to the dietitian. You're writing a letter to the doctor. You're writing a letter to a fellow nurse. You're writing a letter to the social worker. You're writing a letter to the physiotherapist. So you're endorsing this patient's care to somebody else to have continuity of care. You're with me so far. So, yun yung gagawin mo. Now, however, when you look at it, paki-visualize, that 45 minutes, sa tingin mo, ano yan? Fast or slow? Yung 45 minutes na yun, do you think that is like mabilis lang or matagal yan? What you think? What you think? Do you think 45 minutes is a long time? Or do you think it's like a short amount of time? What do you think? Do you think yung 45 minutes na yun is a long amount of time? Or do you think that's like a short amount of time? Short. I agree with you. No? I agree with you. And the data agrees with you as well. When we look at the data, the most common reason for people to fail in writing for the OET, just like in IELTS, is because you run out of time. Time check, you don't have a lot of time. You only have 5 minutes to read and 40 minutes to write. That's not a lot of time. Please take note that no matter how smart you are, if you do not have time to write down your smart thoughts, then you get no credit for them. The OET, after all, just like the IELTS, is a writing test. It's not a telepathy test. It's not like from your thoughts straight to your examiner's thoughts, but rather you have to write them down. So definitely, it is critical that before you register for any test, whether it's the IELTS or the OET, but especially for the IELTS and the OET, wag ka mag-register if you're still not able to consistently finish the writing in time. That's why there are lots of opportunities for you to practice the timing at home. That's why there are lots of materials as well that are available for you to gauge how well you're able to keep your work within the time limitations that you're given. It's very important that you're able to finish on time. Oh, by the way, when you're pag tapos na yung 5 minutes, pag nag-start na yung 40 minutes, is it possible for you, okay na ba, for you to write on the case notes? Yes, it is. It's perfectly fine. Actually, it's quite better for you to write on the case notes para nakikita mo yung itsura ng analysis mo, so that you could see how your analysis is going. It's perfectly acceptable, and in fact, it's actually very good for you to do so. So writing, hopefully you could appreciate, is really one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult subtest in the OET, just like in the IELTS. Primarily for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's something that a lot of people don't do. You don't do it. You don't write letters in English under time pressure. And something that you don't do, you're not very good at. And this is reflected in how well, or maybe not so well, people do the writing test. Writing is hard, number 1, because you don't do it. Writing is hard, number 2, because it's always the last thing that happens in the morning or afternoon of your test. Kasi yung OET, just like IELTS, 4 na exam yun. Listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And those 3 exams, listening, reading, and writing, they always happen together. Listening first, then reading, then writing. So, okay, visualize. I mean, by the time that you do the writing, medyo 2 oras ka na nandun. Diba? You would have, well, actually 3. For example, your exam is in the morning. The exam starts at 9. You have to be there at the latest by 8. So 8 to 9 registration. 8 to 9 registration. 9 to 10 listening. 10 to 11 reading. 11 to 12 writing. So by the time that you do the exam, pagod ka na. Fellow nurses, I mean, what organ of the body consumes the most energy? Remind me. What organ of the body consumes the most energy? The brain. Yeah, exactly. So therefore, literal na hypoglyc ka na by the time that you do your writing. Because you would have been using all your brain cells for listening and for reading. Walang break yan. Diretso yan. OET is a marathon. Not only of the mind, but also of the heart, and also of your katawang lupa. If you do not take care of your body, it betrays you. So, for example, you didn't have like a solid breakfast. If you didn't have like a solid breakfast, then definitely you're definitely going to be hypoglycemic. By the time that you do your writing, puyat ka, for example, the night before, it would impact how well and how quickly you think. You didn't dress appropriately. The exam is cold. Malamig sa venue. Nag-shorts ka, nag-sandals ka, nag-sleeveless ka. But by the time writing, manginginig-nginig ka na nun. You know what I mean? So, some people, they do not prepare well for the exam. And this truly is reflected in their performance in writing. However, sa totoo lang, writing is the hardest, not only because you don't do it, not only because it's the last thing that happens, but primarily because it's very fast. You only have 45 minutes for this. And the most common reason for people to fail in the exam is because you run out of time. You're with me so far? Yeah? Okay. Now, clear, I hope. So what happens in writing? What happens in writing? Unlike listening and reading, which are receptive skills, which means that there's only one correct answer for it. After all, in listening, sinasabi yung sagot, and there's only one audio. In reading, nakasulat yung sagot, and there's only one text. Unlike those tests, in writing, it depends. There's no one correct way to do it. And that is why OET, which is based in Melbourne, they hire examiners, language professionals, highly trained, to know what grade to give you. And these examiners, they use criteria para malaman kung anong score ang kailangan ibigay sa'yo. Let's take a quick look at what your examiners in OET would be using, so that if we know what they're looking for, it will be easier for us to give it to them in case you decide to take the exam. What are the criteria in writing? For your information, there are quite a number of criteria. First is purpose. Then we have content. And we have conciseness and clarity. We have organization and layout. We have genre and style. And then we have language. 6 criteria. Oops, sorry. Purpose is 3 points. This is 7 points. 7 points. 7 points. 7 points. 7 points. Seven times 5 plus 3. Ilan yun? 38. Correct. So writing is out of 38. Writing is out of 38. Let's discuss them briefly. Let's discuss them quite briefly. What is purpose? Purpose means that it has to be very clear kung bakit ka nagsusulat. Ano bang habol mo dyan sa healthcare professional na sinusulatan? In order to assess this, they're looking at 3 specific things. 1, you're supposed to have a very clear purpose statement. What does that mean? Well, let's have a sample. Let's have a sample. Dear doctor, would like her to your care. Mr. Aytona was admitted to our hospital 3 days ago due to pneumonia. Dear doctor, I would like to refer to your care, Mr. Aytona, who was admitted to our hospital 3 days ago due to pneumonia. Do you think that it is clear? Clear ba kung anong gusto kong ipagawa kay doctor? What do you think? Klaro ba kung anong gusto kong mangyari? Is it clear what I want him to do? Yes. Really? Sige nga. Anong pinapagawa ko sa kanya? Sige nga. Anong pinapagawa ko sa kanya? Wala, di ba? Nothing. There's nothing there. No, there's nothing there. It is, I don't have a purpose there. I don't have to refer. Ikaw yung nagre-refer. Di ba? Siya. Anong ginagawa mo? Anong pinapagawa mo? Wala pa. So, this is a pretty good introduction, though, to my patients, right? And that is the first thing that you do in your first paragraph. Sino ba to? Kamusta ba to? So the first sentence in your first paragraph, should be an introduction to your patients. After that, you can have a very clear purpose statement. For example, dear doctor, I would like to refer to your care, Mr. Aytona, was admitted to our hospital 3 days ago due to pneumonia. He would be needing follow-up care as he transitions back to living in the community. Now is it clearer kung anong gusto kong ipagawa sa kanya? Ano ang pinapagawa ko natin sa kanya? What care are we asking him to do? Hello, what care are we asking him to do? What care are we asking him to do? Follow-up care. Good. So parang ganun. So first sentence would be your introduction to the patient. The second would be, a general purpose statement. Speaking of, it's important that hindi mo karirin yung purpose statement, but rather it just has to be general. Everyone, type general. Everyone, type general. Everyone, type general. General. No specifics yet. The specifics come later. And that is the second thing that they look for. That's the second thing that they look for when it comes to this. You have to elaborate on this general purpose statement. What does that look like? So, you introduce the patient, you give your purpose, then you have kwento-kwento here. Kung ano nangyari, ganyan, what happened, what did you do, what was your management. And then later, maybe, you can have, it would be appreciated if would be monitored. Compliance with dietary and exercise regimen. Something like that. Does that sound like follow-up care to you? Din-search natin box sa bahay niya. Monitor naman kung nagko-comply siya dyan sa kanyang dietary and exercise regimen. Is that like an elaboration of what we promised earlier? Of what we're asking, of what he asked him to do earlier? Yes. Ganun lang yun. So, one point, kung very clear yung purpose statement, sa simula. Tapos, yung another point, if you elaborate it later. Very simple. In addition, purpose, what's another thing that's assessed here is whether tama ba yung level of urgency. Type urgency. type urgency. Yeah. Kasi umamin ka, di ba sa totoong buhay, we deal with patients very differently, whether they are apetics patients, pauwi na and all of that, versus deteriorating yung kanyang condition, right? We triage people all the time. We prioritize certain people, certain conditions all the time. And because this is a very central part of healthcare communication, may points yun sa OET. And when it comes to urgency, we should remember that there are always only three things that can happen to our patients. Either our patients are getting better, our patients are getting worse, or our patients, wala lang. When we look at Mr. Aytona here, I would like to refer to your care, Mr. Aytona. What does he sound like to you? Better, worse, or wala lang? Guys, what does he sound like to you? Better, worse, or wala? I would like to, I would like to refer to your care. Better. He sounds better. Kaya mo nga discharge, diba? Kaya mo nga papauwiin. Correct. And because of that, do you think it's urgent or not urgent? Obviously, not urgent. Exactly. However, nasaksak si Pheelyp 3 hours ago. What you think? Urgent or not urgent? Urgent. Diba? And what do you think can we change here in order to communicate na urgent siya? Ano kaya pwede natin ilagay dito? I would like to maybe what? How urgent? Exactly. Just put urgent. I would like to urgently refer to your care, Mr. Aytona, who was, I don't know, who suffered from an abdominal stab wound 3 hours ago. Needs immediate attention to stabilize this condition or something like that. So there. So ibang-iba yung tono, ibang-iba yung tunog na urgent versus not urgent. Okay? Clear so far? So yeah, madali lang maka-perfect sa purpose. Just make sure that you have a general purpose statement at the start, elaborate it later, and then the level of urgency is clear. Not so easy though is yung mga kasunod. Yung contents and conciseness and clarity. These two things are best discussed together. Oops, wait. These two things are best discussed together. Why? Kasi these two things, These two things are best discussed together because they both talk about information selection. Everyone type information selection. Everyone type information selection. Sa chart, maraming information. Right? In the case notes as well, there will be a lot of information there. You have to know which things must make it to your letter and which things better not. Wag na lang. And that is tumataginting na 14 points. 14 points for your exam. What's the difference between them? Contents. You get points for contents for including information that should be included. Let's write that down. May points ka sa contents. Kung binigay mo yung information na dapat mo naman talaga binigay. On the other hand, you get points for conciseness and clarity for not including information that you shouldn't give naman. for example. Kaya nagpapamonitor ka ng adherence sa medication regimen. Do you think kailangan mong banggitin yung meds in the first place? Malamang, di ba? Kasi otherwise, paano niya mamamonitor kung ano yung meds? Paano niya mamamonitor yung adherence sa medication regimen if you don't know what the meds are in the first place? So therefore, if you include the meds, you get points for content. If you do not include the meds, you get minus sa content. On the other hand, kung nagpapamonitor ka ng medication compliance, do you think you need to inform the person na mahilig siyang mag-yoga during the weekends? What you think? Walay, diba? Parang, that has nothing to do with anything. I agree with you. So that would be an irrelevant detail. So, nagpapamonitor ka ng medication compliance, hindi mo sinama yung likes to do yoga during the weekends. You get points sa conciseness and clarity. Kung sinama mo yung yoga during the weekends, you get minus sa conciseness and clarity because your letter would be more cluttered. It would be messier because of all of that details there that don't belong there anyway. You're with me so far? With me? Yeah? Lovely. Now, however, it becomes a little bit more complicated when we discuss them in detail. For example, when it comes to contents, kung ano ba yung ibibigay mo na information, it's very, very important for you to keep your reader in mind. Everyone, type reader. Reader. Hello. Yeah. It's important for you to keep your reader in mind. Kasi you say different things to a psychologist versus a social worker versus a PT versus a rad tech versus a community nurse versus an ER nurse, for example. Iba-iba yan. You say different things depending on your audience. So, and when you're thinking about your reader, it's important, as I just said, for you to know your reader's profession. You say different things with dietitian versus fellow nurse. Another thing that you keep in mind is whether this patient is known or not known to the person you're writing. Whether first time or not first time, magkakilala yun. Magkikita yung dalawang tao. For example, visualize. Si Lola, nakatira siya sa retirement home. Nagka-heart attack si Lola. Binato sa'yo sa hospital. You stabilize Lola. Tapos, ibabato mo pabalik sa retirement home yung patanda. Write a letter to the retirement homes. Do you think kailangan mo pang ikwento yung mga chronic conditions ni Lola dun sa letter mo? No. Sino kaya ang mas kabisado yung mga chronic conditions na yun? Tayo or sila? Sino kaya ang mas kabisado yun? Tayo or sila? Sila. Doon nakatira yung matanda. So, gets. Of course, if there was a change in her chronic conditions because of what happened in the hospital, yun, ikakwento mo ba yun? Yes, because these are things that the people over there would not know because they happen under age. Something like that. So when we look at our example here, dear doctor, I would like to urgently refer to your care, Mr. Aytona. What does that sound like to you? First time or not first time? I would like to refer to your care, Mr. Aytona. What does this sound like to you? First time or not first time? First time. Yeah, first time. Correct. Paano kung not first time? What would be a good way kaya to indicate this? Refer back? Yeah. Sa Republika ng Pilipinas, sanay tayo dyan sa refer back. Ngunit sa ballot datapot, parang may sinabi si OED na parang it's contradictory kasi refer daw means first time. Back means not first time. So it's kind of contradictory. Transfer back, yeah, maybe. So why don't we just say return? Diba? Kung doon naman siya galing. I would like to return to your care. As has been said here, I would like to update you regarding Mr. Aytona. Kung dati pa naman sila magkakilala, like the GP, for example. There. Discharge back to your care. Yeah, that could be good. If you are discharging. Transfer back if you're transferring. It depends. So there. So it's critical that in the first sentence, it is clear whether na-gets mo, whether no or not no, itong si patient, dun sa taong pinapasahan mo sa the person you're writing to. Clear so far? Lovely. That's pretty straightforward. Yung medyo hindi straightforward is yung next. Kasi, di ba may case notes, no? May parang chart. Siyempre, hindi mo ika-copy-paste yun. Of course, you're not gonna like steal the English from the exam. Tapos yun yung ipapresenta mo for grading. Siyempre, maganda yung English kasi kinopy mo. So, you're supposed to paraphrase. You're supposed to paraphrase the contents in your case notes in order to make it your own, in order to reformulate the ideas using your own words. Historically, we have found that this is one of the areas where a lot of people get tripped up. It's something that is not always very easy. For example, let's have an example. Well, let's start with something easy. Pheelyp has a fever. What are different ways for you to say this? What are different ways for you to say that Pheelyp has a fever? Can you give me examples? Give me sentences. Jeff says Pheelyp is feverish. Give me 10. Give me sentences. Wrong spelling, Angelica. Sheila. Pheelyp is febrile. Okay. Pheelyp has a high-grade fever. Kev, wrong spelling. Give me complete sentences. Give me complete sentences. Come on, 7 more. Diana says Pheelyp has a temp of 38 degrees Celsius. Correctly saying this. Pheelyp has a high body temperature. JP says Pheelyp has increased body temperature. Merle Marion says Pheelyp's temperature is about normal. Okay. 3 more. Ryan says Pheelyp has an increased body temperature. Anything else? Anything else? JP says Philip's body temperature is elevated. Ellie says Philip has elevated body temperature. We shall discuss that later, Bella Aurora Lupisa. Diane says Philip is hyperthermic. Anyone else? Anyone else? Philip is experiencing elevated body temperature. Let's see what you guys came up with. Let's analyze them. Oops. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. How si Dayan? Philip has a spike of temperature. I have a question. When you say Philip has a fever, sure or not sure that he has a fever? Sure tayo o hindi sure that he has a fever? Philip has a fever. Yun yung nakasulat. Sure or not sure? Sure. Kasi nakasulat he has a fever. Right? So we're sure about it. Anong not sure? We are sure. Kasi nakasulat na meron siyang fever. Right now, he has a fever. Which numbers here? Hindi tayo sure. Parang hindi tayo sigurado. Which numbers? Which numbers here? Parang hindi tayo sure. Kung may fever ba o wala si Philip. Si Juan, yeah. When you say feverish, parang no, but you're not. It's not I mean, you are sure that he has fever. See 13? Yeah. I mean, if I have a spike of temperature, does that mean that I have a fever? If I have a spike of temperature, does that mean that I have a fever? Can you give me reasons why I might have a spike in temperature? Bigla akong uminit. Can you give me reasons? Weather, kasi mainit. Ano pa? Fertile, lol, food, activity, hormones. Exactly. No. Loading. What else? Dehydration. Good. Fashion. Yeah. What's this? The Philip has a fever. Are you sure what specific temperature he is? No, hindi ka naman thermometer. So, which one is wrong? 4. Yeah. Nag-assume tayo na hindi naman talaga natin sigurado. 6. Philip has an increase. Philip has increased body temperature. Wrong grammar, di ba? Kung sinabi mong mataas yung kanyang body temperature, how would you say number 6? Mas mataas than normal yung kanyang body temperature. How would you say this? It's not increased, right? But rather, increased. Increased. Parang it describes the body temperature. However, if so, sometimes the meaning is compromised because of poor grammar. I have a question. If he is kung increased yung body temperature above normal, is it possible for him? If you say that the body temperature is increased, does that mean that it is above normal? If you say that the body temperature is increased, does that mean that it is above normal? If you say that the body temperature is increased, does that mean that it is above normal? Yes. So which number here is redundant? Which number here is redundant? Therefore, it's 8. Okay. Good. What kind of fever am I having? Low grade or high grade? What kind of fever am I having? Low grade or high grade? Not stated. We don't know. Close tayo. Ikaw yung naka-duty. You don't know these things. So we cannot assume na high grade siya. So mali yung 3. Everything else is fine. So, madali ba magkamali? Medyo. Yeah. Kinda tricky. Kinda tricky. So, so clearly based on experience, a lot of people do have difficulties in saying the same thing in different ways. And that's why it's good for you to remember that when you're paraphrasing, essentially you can do it in 2 ways. You can paraphrase in terms of vocab, or you can paraphrase in terms of grammar. Let's have an example. You have a sentence, the boy is delicious. What would you say is another way to say the boy? What's another way to say the boy? What's another way to say the boy? Pwedeng he. Okay. Ano pa? Pwedeng the young man. The child. Pag child, nawala yung maleness. Diba? Ano pa? Pwedeng the guy. Nawala yung youngness. Diba? The grown up. Nawala yung youngness. He's a boy. The lad. Right? The young guy. The young man. Good. How about delicious? What's another way to say delicious? What's another way to say delicious? Appetizing. Delectable. Scrumptious. Ano pa? Delicious. Tastes good. Luscious. Yummy. Tasty. You know, yeah. So etc. So if you know that mouth watering, lagay natin. Now, delightful is not necessarily about taste. Same thing as enticing, not necessarily. So if you know the vocab, if you know another way to say it, edi ikaw na, good for you. However, sometimes it's hard for you to select the right word for it, right? For example, kapag sinabi mong mouth-watering, ano yun? Delicious or super delicious? Pag sinabi mong mouth-watering, ano yun? Delicious or super delicious? Super delicious. Do you think that would be an appropriate paraphrase, therefore? Or what we are trying to substitute? Yung si mouth-watering. No. Kasi nagdagdag ka ng meaning. Hindi naman sinabing super delicious. Sinabi lang, sakto lang. Delicious. So, in a way, it's also tricky for you to use the correct vocabulary for it. So, it's challenging. And that's why sometimes it's easier for you to substitute, to paraphrase. Instead of through vocab, you can just use grammar. Yeah, what's another way to do this? Instead of using the boy is delicious, you can just say, there is a delicious boy. You just moved it around. So you didn't change the words. Delicious, delicious, boy, boy. Pero inikot mo siya. Pwede na yan? Pwede na yan. Because not everybody knows na ito tsaka to, they mean the same thing. Now, pag pinag-rumble-rumble mo yan, pareho pa rin ang ibig sabihin. Because sometimes, pag pinag-rumble-rumble mo yan, hindi na siya pareho ang ibig sabihin. For example, house dog and dog house. Do they mean the same thing? House dog and dog house. Do they mean the same thing? They do not. There is a delicious boy. The boy is delicious. Do they mean the same thing? There is a delicious boy. The boy is delicious. Do they mean the same thing? Yes. The fact that you know the difference is proof enough that you are comfortable with the language. Then you get points for that. It is important that hindi ka nagtatagal trying to find the perfect word for you to paraphrase. Because some people nagtatagal dyan. Kung wala kang maisip na other word, edi ikutin mo na lang, pag-rumblein mo siya, substitute it through grammar. Hindi mo alam yung word, hindi mo ma-substitute through grammar, then copy-paste. Leave it as is. Write it as is. You won't get a lot of points for that, but it is important na makausap ka, that you move on, and that you're not stuck in one area after another. After all, what is the most common reason again for people to fail in writing? What is the most common reason again for people to fail in writing? Remind me. Time. Correct. You run out of time. So therefore, huwag kang magpaka-stuck dyan sa paraphrase na yan. Galaw-galaw. Galaw-galaw. You're with me so far? Hopefully so. Hopefully so. So yan yung content. Content is when you're giving information that the reader would be needing. Related to that, but in an opposite way, itong si conciseness and clarity. Again, conciseness and clarity is about not giving information that should not be there. First thing to do there, the first thing to think about regarding that is, of course, you should not be including irrelevant details. Oh, wait. Okay, let's just put it here. The first thing, of course, is that you're not supposed to be putting irrelevant details. Nagpapamonitor ka ng compliance medication regimen, syempre hindi mo na kailangang banggitin yung yoga during the weekend. That is easy enough. Yung not so easy is is sometimes some details relevant naman siya, but maybe not to the extent that you detail everything. And that is why sometimes you have to summarize. Everyone, type summarize. Summarize. Gulaw. Summarize. Summarize. Yeah. You don't detail everything, but you just give the general idea. For example, sino dito taga-OR? I saw some people here. Major operating theater. Sino yung taga-OR ulit dito? Who are the OR people? Paramdam. Who are the OR people? Paramdam. Jo Marie. Jo Marie, can you give me a common procedure, please? A common procedure. Can you give me one? Jo Marie. Or Raquel? Give me a common procedure. Appendectomy. Okay. Let's go with appendectomy. Debridement, yeah. Lap cole, X-lap are also common. CS, very common. Question. Kunyari, day 1, after appendectomy, after an appendectomy, is it normal for there to still be pain? Is it normal na may pain pa? Yes. 1 to 10. I'm not sure. I've forgotten these things. 1 to 10. Like immediately after. Like how painful is it supposed to be? Regularly. Hmm. 8. 8 ba? Okay. 8 pala. 7. Is it more of 7? Okay. Is it normal for there to be bleeding 1 day after the procedure? Yes. Lots of bleeding or konti lang? Lots of bleeding or konti lang? Minimal bleeding. Sure. Konti lang. How about redness? Minimal to none. Is it normal for there to be redness? The thing is red, of course. I think so. Day 3. It's been 3 days since the operation. Is it normal for there to still be pain? Yes. 1 to 10. I've never gone through it. I don't know. 3 to 4. 4 to 5. Okay. Mas marami 4 to 5. Let's go with 4 to 5. Bleeding. 3 days after the operation. May bleeding. Is it still normal for there to be bleeding 3 days? No, not. Okay. All right. I believe you. How about redness? Redness. 3 days after. Redness in the incision site. Yes. Slight. Okay. Slight na lang. Day 7. It's been a week since, the operation. Is it still normal for there to be pain? Is it? No. No na ba? No na ba? I see a no, I see a yes. I see slight. Is it no? Slight? Maybe. Sige, lagyan natin. Okay, I see slide. 1, 2, 2. Redness, yes or no? Parang wala na dapat, diba? Parang no. Ideally na. I have a question. Kung ganito yung nakasulat sa case notes, no? Day 1, ganyan, ganyan. Day 3, ganyan, ganyan. Day 7, ganyan, ganyan. Did anything weird happen? Was there any deviation from the normal planet recovery? None. Wala. It's perfectly boring. Diba? So, you don't have to detail all of that. No? But rather, you just summarize it. Why don't you say, why don't you just say something like, his post-operative recovery was unremarkable, was normal, was uneventful, mga ganyan. Diba? So instead of like talking about all of these things, hindi na kailangan. Hindi mo na siya delikate. And that's one way for you to get points in conciseness and clarity by summarizing details na hindi naman irrelevant, pero you don't need to go into that level of detail. Clear so far? Clear so far? Yes? Lovely. Good. Of course, this is going to be very much related to the reader as well. Paki-visualize. Kunyari, meron kang dalawang topics. Si diet, ito yung detail about the diet, detail about the diet. And then you have exercise. Exercise, detail about exercise. Detail. Question, which one dito ang isa-summarize? Assuming you will include both of them, which one dito ang isa-summarize natin? Si diet or si exercise? Which one ang isa-summarize natin? Si diet or si exercise? I see diet, I see both. The correct answer, though, is what Ruth S. Love says. It depends. It depends. For example, kung ang kausap natin ay, I don't know, dietitian, sino kaya ang isa-summarize natin? Diet or exercise? Si exercise ang isa-summarize natin. Sino yung i-detalye natin? Si diet. If we're talking to a physiotherapist, sino isa-summarize natin? Diet. And the one that we detail, exercise. You get the point. You get the point. So you see that these two things are very much related to one another. And the decisions that you make must be reflected in the language that you use as well. What is one way for you to know na medyo tama yung ginagawa mo regarding information selection? Would anybody know what the word count has to be? Actually, ang sabi dun sa case notes is that you can write your letter. Normally, is approximately 180 to 200 words. Let me write that down. Normally, your word count nasa around 180 to 200 words. Importante yung around kasi hindi nagbibilang yung mga examiners natin sa number ng words. Sa Ielts, super strict sila sa word count. Sa writing task 1, minimum of 150 words. Sa writing task 2, minimum of 250 words. You get a minus in task achievement or task response if you write below the minimums. And that is why in the Ielts exam, for the writing test, for the paper-based exam, your examiners, they have clickers to help them count, click, 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 click. How many words you were able to write? However, sa OET, wala silang oras na ganun. Because sa totoong buhay in the world, does anyone count your words? Sa OR, sa NICO, sa PICO, when you're writing in the chart, does anyone count your words? No, no one does that. No one does that. And that's why OET does not do it too. But rather, your examiners, they do count something. Meron silang binibilang. And what they count is your ideas. What they count are your ideas. Nabanggit pa niya yung metformin, hindi niya nabanggit. Nabanggit pa niya na yung pain started Saturday, o hindi niya nabanggit na Saturday pa yung pain. Parang ganun. Now, ang reassurance ng OET is that if you do your information selection correctly, you include the information you're supposed to include. You do not include the information you're not supposed to include. Naturally napapalo sa around 180 to 200 words yung letter. So therefore, the importance of your word count are not the words themselves, but rather what they represent. Your information selection. Getting it? Yung words, so yung bilang mismo is not what matters, but rather what it represents, which is information selection. Available naman online yung sample writing answer sheets. Yung papel mismo na gagamitin mo when you are going to be writing your letter in the exam. It's highly suggested if you're going to be taking the tests and you're going to be practicing to write on the actual sheet of paper na gagamitin mo sa exam para makita mo anong itsura ng around 180 to 200 words in your own unique handwriting. Because some people, they write small, like me, and maybe hanggang page 1 lang sila. But some people, they write really large, pangdambuhala, panghigante. And maybe for them, they're around 180 to 200 words. Abot sa tok-tok ng page 2. It depends. And in the actual exam, you have no time to count your words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the first place, your examiners themselves do not count words. Second of all, you don't have a lot of time. You only have 45 minutes for this. So, that means that dapat isang tinginan sa papel. Medyo lalampas na ba ako sa usual place in the paper that for my around 180 to 200 words? Sobrang kulang ba? Sobrang layo ba dun sa usual place where I do my 180 to 200 words? Parang ganun. So, it's important for you to know where in the paper you normally end in order to be somewhere near your approximate 180 to 200 words. Something like that. You should try it. Are you with me so far? Get so far? I hope so. I hope so. If you have any questions, now would be a good time to ask. I understand it's quite a lot to process. It's a sick 1 hour. Do you have any questions for me so far? Anything you'd like me to clarify? Anything you're curious about? Anything you'd like me to discuss in a little bit more detail? Anything? Okay. Nothing. Okay, no worries. Diane has a question. Sir, do we get a deduction pag hindi namin na-paraphrase ang symptoms? Like difficulty of breathing. It depends. Kung masyadong marami na copy-paste, yeah. However, if not naman, ang konti lang naman yung copy-paste mo, you'd probably get away with it. As always, it depends. It depends. Usually, the better, of course. It's better for you to do it. But sometimes, wala naman talaga. Kunyari, what's another way to say pneumonia? What's another way to say pneumonia? Pneumonia? Ganun. I mean, sometimes there is no other way to say it. What's another way to say paracetamol? Nothing else. So, you know, they're not so strict about it as long as, well, let me take that back. As long as hindi masyado marami, that's probably going to be just fine. But best efforts, as always. Any other questions? Questions are good. Can you use medical abbreviations? No, that's a good question. We'll talk about that when we come to genre and style. But to answer your question now, Malibi, it depends. There are three considerations for it. Like, ano yung mas common? Yung abbreviation o yung spelled out version? Kunyari, ano yung mas common na ginagamit? The patient has HPN or the patient has hypertension? Fellow nurses, what do we use? What do we do? The patient has HPN or the patient has hypertension? What do we say? The patient has HPN or the patient has hypertension? Hypertension. Ngunit subalit dapat, which is more common? MRI or magnetic resonance imaging? Umamin, which is more common? MRI. O parang ganun. So in the first thing that you think about is which is the more common version? Is it the spelled out version or the not spelled out version? The second thing we think about is, alam ba yan, yung abbreviation na yan ng kausap mo? Yeah, mas common yung MRI. Pero yung social worker, you think memorize niya kung ano yun? Tabiso, for example. Do you think memorize niya yun? I don't think so, right? So maybe not. Maybe you need to spell it out for some readers. In addition, kailangan hindi masyado marami. Kaya yung mga frequency ng medications. TID, OD, QID, BID. That's common. Kausap mo nurse. Gets naman na yun. Pero kung ang dami na niya, masyado nang marami, the letter starts becoming too informal. Hindi kasi siya charting, but rather it's a formal correspondence. Parang siyang cover letter. Think of it like yung case notes niya parang chart. Tapos diba, pack. Sometimes it comes with a letter when it's endorsed from someone. You know what I mean? That summarizes the main points. So it's not supposed to be an informal piece of writing, but rather something that doesn't have too many abbreviations. However, sometimes it is appropriate. Kunyari, nasaksak si Pheelyp 3 hours ago. You're endorsing him to the emergency room nurse. Do you think it's appropriate to use BP instead of blood pressure? Yes. RR instead of respiratory rate? Yes. Parang ganun. So it depends. It depends. You have to think about it, whether it's appropriate or not. You're welcome. Any other questions? How do we count 10 mg? Is it 2 words? Doesn't, well, in the first place, doesn't really matter because it doesn't, no one counts words. But I think it's just 10 mg. But again, it doesn't matter. The more important question is, dapat ko bang sinama yung 10 mg o hindi ko dapat sinama yung 10 mg? Because examiners do not count words, but rather ideas. Understood, Raquel? Was that clear, Raquel? Would you like me to explain further, Raquel? Yes, gets now. Okay. One more. Sir, question. Can we use ballpen rather than pencil? Oo naman. Oo naman. Pero yung advantage ng pencil is, pencil kasi yung gamit mo sa listening siya sa reading. O di pencil na lang din sa writing. In addition, yung pencil nabubura. So it may be neater for you to edit using a pencil. And you will make mistakes. You will definitely make mistakes when you write your letter. Kasi wala kang oras para mag-draft. Mel, you're welcome. Melly B, may computer exam din ba sa writing ng OET like Ielts? Yes, yes, yes. So yung computer-based test for OET is Ateneo. So we have a campus sa Quezon City and we have a campus in Makati sa may Rockwell. So doon, yung prometric, yung parang NCLEX, parang ganyan. Type. If you're interested in that, may pa-demo sila sa OET website so that you can see what it's like. Rhea Steph, oh, yan. Oh, from Facebook mo to. I don't see kasi Facebook comments. Thank you for bringing the questions here in Zoom. Rhea Steffi Pantinople Glitar. Usage of furthermore, moreover, on writing task. Is it a no-no or is it okay? We'll talk about that in a while, but in genre and style. But the idea is you're supposed to avoid academic language when it comes to your letter writing. Hindi kasi siya IELTS writing task too. Wala tayo sa school. We're not in university. So you should generally avoid words like, I guess, furthermore, like hence, thus. Mga ganun. Simplihan natin. Also, in addition, Gary Sarmiento Leonardo. If you exceed more than 200 words, any deduction? Well, in the first place, do examiners count words? Hello. Remind me. Do examiners count words? No. So you cannot get deductions if they do not measure it in the first place. Ngunit, subalit datakwat. What do examiners count? Ideas. Yun, bilang na bilang yun. No? Parang, binanggit ba niya yung cholecystectomy? Okay, good. Ay, hindi niya binanggit ang minus. Parang gano'n. Gets. Raquel, sir, what if, long, what? What does CN mean? Long, Case notes. And madaming relevant information. Tapos nag-exceed ng 200. Okay lang. In the first place, do examiners count words? Parang deja vu, no? Parang a few sentences ago lang. Ulitin natin, no? Parang wala nangyari. No? Do examiners count words? No. But rather they count ideas. So yeah. CL. Sir, ano po mas okay? Capital letter lahat or hindi? Pag parehas ka naman po comfortable magsulat sa if you're equally comfortable in writing both, then why don't you go for capital letters? Para hindi mo naisipin yung capitalization. Gary Sarmiento Leonardo. I mean, if it's obviously too long. Well, if it's obviously too long, I think it's too long. That means that meron kang sinama na shit, hindi mo naman dapat sinama. Irrelevant detail. Mel, how about all small letter? Walang ganun, Mars. Walang ganun, Mars. No one writes like that. At least in formal letters. Anything else? Questions are good. Going? Ay, wait, meron palang Facebook. Oops. So, Any other questions? Precious Santayana. Sir, counted din po ba ang heading sa letter writing? Wala tayong mga heading tayo. Walang ganun, Mars. Hi po, Tita Grace. Okay, let's continue. Organization and layout. Ano naman? So, yung sa content and conciseness and clarity, that's how you select information, right? Na-select mo na. So, paano mo siya ayusin? So, that how you organize your information, you have to do it in a way para mas madaling mag-gets ng tao kung ano ba yung sitwasyon ni patient. Oh wait, Mel has a question. I mean, after period, you forgot to capitalize the next letter. May deduction po ba yun? Well, we'll talk about that in a while. But to answer your question now, when it comes to language, grammar and all of that, meron tayong ratio, 1:5. What is our ratio? Type it. What is our ratio? What is our ratio? 1:5. One error that changes meaning is of the same weight as 5 errors that do not change meaning. Similar to the Ielts exams. So, sample. Pheelyp have a fever. Right or wrong? Pheelyp have a fever. Right or wrong? Pheelyp have a fever. Right or wrong? Wrong. Correct. What should it be? Has. Tama. When it's a valid data point, Pheelyp have a fever. Gets mo pa rin ba kung ano yung gusto kong sabihin? Do you still understand it? Despite the fact that it is grammatically wrong? Yes. Compare that with this one. His symptoms has worsened. Right or wrong? His symptoms has worsened. Right or wrong? His symptoms has worsened. Right or wrong? Wrong. Okay. Ano yung wrong dito? Ano yung wrong dito? Have. Okay. Dapat have. Kasi plural dapat yung symptoms. Ngunit sa bad data po, pwede bang yung symptoms, yung mali? Actually, dapat symptom pala siya. Pwede ba yun? Kaya magiging tama yung has. Pwede yun, di ba?
No.
So, therefore, how many symptoms are we talking about here, therefore? One or many? We don't know. We don't know. Kasi nga, di ba, pwedeng mali yung has, di ba? Tama yung symptoms. Pero shit, pwedeng tama yung has, tapos yung symptoms yung mali. Right? Dapat symptom, lang pala. Do you get it? Kung symptoms, you're talking about more than one symptom. Kung symptom, you're talking only about one. Alin dyan yung tama? We don't know. We don't know. It's confusing. No? So, therefore, is meaning compromised? Yes. So, ang sabi ni OET, therefore, ito yung punchline. Sabi ni OET, isang ganyan, equivalent sa 5 ganyan. So, one error, one grammatical error that changes meaning is the same as 5 errors that do not. So going back to the question, if ano daw, if you do not capitalize after a period, will it change the meaning? No. No, really. Pero kung every sentence, hindi ka nag-capitalize, medyo marami ba yun? Kahit na 5 lang yun, di ba? 5:1. Pero kung naka-20 ka naman, kasi 20 yung sentences mo, medyo madami din yun. Di ba? So, tamain na natin siya. Did you get that? Did you get that? Mel. Yes, good. Good question. Going back, so let's talk about organization and layout. So organization and layout is how you arrange yung mga information na na-select. And there are 3 ways for you to do it. First, you have to have proper paragraphing. Type paragraphing. Type paragraphing. Type paragraphing. Type paragraphing. Okay. Kada paragraph, guys. Oh, I'm so sorry. Aska Jamal says, please use English. I don't understand the language which you use. Apologies. I didn't think that there would be foreigners here. All right. I'll speak straight English then. Thank you for letting me know. Ashad Jamal. For every paragraph, how many main ideas should we have? Guys, for every paragraph, how many main ideas should we have? Only 1. Correct. So if this paragraph is about A, then everything about A is here. This paragraph is about B, everything about B should be here. And if this paragraph is about C, then everything about C should be there. Think about paragraphs like rooms in your house. For example, if this paragraph is about your bedroom, everything that should be in the bedroom belongs there. Can you give me 10 things that you can find in your bedroom? Bed, pillow, humidifier, blankets, aircon, other things that you can find in your bed. TV, bed lamp, sure. Clothes, okay. Cabinets, side table. All right. For example, paragraph B is about your kitchen. Give me 10 things that you can find in your kitchen. Air fryer, ladle, open, sink, dishwasher, knife, frying pan, microwave, refrigerator, plates. Sure. For example, C is about, I don't know, your living room. 10 things you can find in your living room. sofa, yes, Alicet, chandelier, center table, TV, speakers, painting, dapat lang, frames, altar, curtains, remote, window. Okay, thank you. So things that belong. So think of your paragraphs as as like rooms in your house. You put things where they belong. So it would be weird for you to have knives in your bedroom. It would be strange to have an oven in your living room. Just like it would be very strange for you to have I don't know, a dishwasher in your bed or a sofa in the kitchen. One at a time. What OET is assessing here is your ability to compartmentalize your thoughts. Type compartmentalize. Type compartmentalize. Type compartmentalize. Type compartmentalize. Yeah. What's the root word of compartment? 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 Ano yung root word ng compartment? What's the root word of compartment? Hi, what's the root word of compartment? Part. Exactly. Part. So, part 1, part 2, part 3. You do things one at a time. So similarly, this paragraph is about hypertension. Everything about hypertension, you put it there. On the other hand, if this paragraph is about diabetes, then everything about diabetes, you put it there as well. If this paragraph is about depression, then everything about depression, you put it there as well. Clear. Right? Now, this, however, is only one way for you to organize your ideas. There are 2 ways for you to do it. One way for you to do it is, which is what we did, is doing it thematically. Thematic. One topic per paragraph. You organize your paragraphs per topic. Another way is for you to do it chronologically. Logical. Type thematic and chronological. Type thematic and chronological. Type thematic and chronological. Type thematic and chronological. Yeah, 2 ways. One way is like this: hypertension, that's diabetes, that's depression. Another way is, sequence, when it is the sequence of events that matter more. 3 hours ago, blah, 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 this is what happened. Next paragraph, maybe 5 hours ago, this is what was happening. Maybe next paragraph, a day ago, this is what happened. Now, which is better for you to use, thematic or chronological? Well, the answer there is it depends on which needs to be emphasized. This is a decision that you would have to make when you encounter your case notes already. What would be whether you do it thematic or chronological, it's usually a good idea for you to already have something here at the start of your paragraph to let the reader know what it is that you're talking about. Here, you put it at the start. We can call that our header. Everyone, type header. Everyone, type header. Yeah. For example, regarding his hypertension, blah, 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 blah. About his diabetes, blah, 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 blah. It would be appreciated if, blah, 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 blah. So just reading these things, it is very clear that the first paragraph is about hypertension, the second is about diabetes, and the third one is requests. No? What are you asking the person to do? Alternatively, if it sounds like this, during his stay, blah, 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 after discharge, blah, 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 it would be appreciated. Blah, 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 blah. This is a more chronological arrangement. The first paragraph is what happened during admission. Second is after he went back, after he got away, after he had to be discharged. And the third would be the action. Again, which is more appropriate depends on the case notes. However, paragraphing is not the only consideration that you need, but also proper prioritization. Type prioritization. Type prioritization. Type prioritization. Yeah. I have a question. In general, which is more important? Hypertension or depression? In general, which is more important? Hypertension or depression? In general, which is more important? Hypertension or depression? Correct. It depends. No? It truly depends, even in the real world, in general. Is it possible that my hypertension is perfectly well controlled, but yesterday I tried to kill myself? Yeah. In that case, which one do you prioritize? In that case, which one do you prioritize? Depression. Is it possible that my depression is well controlled, but my cholesterol is really high? Which one do you prioritize in that case? Which one do you prioritize in that case? Hypertension. You get the point. So just like in the real world, we put the most important things first. That's the first thing that you mentioned. Which is more important, medical history or social history? Which is more important, medical history or social history? Good, you're learning. That is always the correct answer. It depends. It's perfectly possible. His medical history is fine, but his social history is the one that has serious problems. Therefore, you talk about that first. So you see, therefore, that the ordering of your paragraphs, the ordering of the details in your paragraphs as well, cannot be decided ahead of time. It's a judgment call that you have to make for each of your case notes. There is no one format that you follow. It depends. It's a judgment call that you make. Speaking of judgment calls, hypertension and diabetes, are they related to each other? Say hypertension, tsaka diabetes. Are they correlated? Do they go together? Usually. Meaning, not all the time. It depends. It depends. It depends. Therefore, the punchline, if you separate the discussion of hypertension and diabetes in different paragraphs, what are you telling me? What are you telling the reader? Related or not related, these two conditions? Not related. However, if you discuss in a single paragraph hypertension and diabetes, what are you telling me? Related or not related? Related. So you see, therefore, what you decide to discuss together, what you decide to cluster in the same discussion, very much tells the reader a lot of information regarding how your patient is doing. There's no such thing, after all, as a generic patient. They don't exist. But rather, there are only unique people with a unique set of circumstances. And your job is to communicate this set of circumstances as faithfully as you can. And one way for you to do it is paragraphing, another judgment call that you would have to make when you see your case notes. When it comes to organization and layout, we've discussed two things so far: paragraphing, prioritization. There's another thing, which is connectedness. And it's the last one: type connectedness. Connectedness. Type connectedness. Connectedness. Type connectedness. Good. Now, before we continue, there is a question. Melly B, how many paragraphs do we need in the letters? Classmates, answer. How many paragraphs should we use? How many paragraphs should we use? It depends. Correct. It depends. It's always the correct answer. Sometimes you need 2 paragraphs to discuss hypertension and diabetes. Sometimes you need 1 because they're closely related to one another, right? You cannot make these decisions ahead of time. Again, it would be a judgment call that you would have to make for every case notes that you use. The third aspect of organization and layout is connectedness, how they are related to one another. For example, bedroom. You put all the bedroom stuff in the bedroom, but it's possible that it's messy, not really well put together. So the relationship between the different ideas in your paragraphs must be clear. There must be a flow between. Essentially, in the first sentence to the last sentence, in the first sentence to the last sentence, in the first sentence to the last sentence, it must make sense how they are related. Let's have a quick example. We have 4 details. Question, do you think they're related to each other? These 4 things. Do they look clustered properly? Yeah, I think so. What topic do you think this is about? What topic do you think this is about? Diabetes. I agree. So everything about diabetes, you put them all together in a paragraph. But you have to arrange them. Do you think that they're related to one another? And I think there is a cause and effect relationship between them. Which letter here is the effect? Which letter here is the effect? B, correct. Everything else causes that or contributes to that, right? Sense. So what could be one way for you to connect them? Maybe something like this.
Grabe. Mahirap pala Ate Jubilin mag-intindi ng mga...
Tawag yung kapatid ko kasi lasing.
Philip's serum glucose level is high due to several reasons: colon, failure to comply with his hyperglycemic medication regimen, frequency of consuming sugary food, and lack of physical activity. Because I use a colon, is it clear what the relationship is here? I think so. This first thing, but as his serum glucose level is high, and I promised several reasons why that is the case. What's my first reason? Failure to comply, frequency, and then lack of physical activity. One way for you to arrange things so that their relationship to each other is clear. Questions so far regarding paragraphing, prioritizing, and connectedness? Questions so far? None. Okay. Oops. Oops. Excuse me. We come to genre and style. And what is genre and style? Genre is like, there are different ways of communicating the same. Just like there are different kinds of movies, different genres of movies, like action, thrillers, documentaries, different genres of books, references, fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi. There are different genres of communication as well. We communicate differently through Facebook Messenger versus through email versus through written letters. And there are some things that are acceptable in some genres that are not acceptable in others. For example, if you're communicating through Facebook Messenger, is it okay for you to like use emojis, not spell properly, maybe sometimes, not have proper punctuation? Yeah, that's fine. But if you're writing an email to your boss, do you think it's fine for you to send cats and dogs, and emojis? I don't think so. So same thing here in OET letter writing. The genre is formal communication in the context of work. So you're a healthcare professional talking to another healthcare professional to endorse a patient. What are the things that you need to keep in mind? First is it has to look like a letter, not a poem, not an essay. And in class, we talk about a format for your letter so that you have a baseline idea of what it looks like. In addition, your letter has to be formal. What that means are several things. First, you're not supposed to have contractions. No, isn't, aren't, wouldn't, couldn't. No, nothing like that. In speaking, they're fine. But in writing, not a single one. In addition, you're not supposed to use exclamation points, question marks, quotation marks if you're not quoting direct speech, parentheses, brackets, dashes. These are informal punctuation marks. Avoid them. You're also not supposed to be using academic language, which we discussed earlier. No, furthermore, thus, hints, consequently. Why simply natin? Use simpler transitions. You're also not supposed to be using symbols. You know, like, what's this? What does this mean, guys? What does this mean? I. What does that mean? L with a circle on it. That's left. R with a circle on it. That's right. Arrow up. Up. Arrow up. Increase. Arrow down. What does that mean? Decrease. Right. Question mark. What does that mean? Question mark. What does that mean? Maybe, unknown, perhaps, could be, potentially, ganyan. Correct? TV. Sorry. TC. TC. Consider. RV. 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 Review. Good. Things like that. So you're not supposed to be using symbols because this is not a chart. So rather spell them out. Earlier, we also talked about abbreviations. Should you use abbreviations? It depends on those three things that we mentioned. Which is more common? Which is more common? Is it understood by the reader? Do you already have too many? So you have to be very judicious to judge very carefully whether you use abbreviations or not. In addition to that, when it comes to genre and style, you should prioritize the action over the person. When we're endorsing, after all, we don't really care so much who did it, but we care more about what was done. Wouldn't you agree? For example, what that means is that sometimes, not all the time, of course, but sometimes it would be better for you to use the active voice instead of the passive voice. There are circumstances where it's like that. For example, we say the doctor prescribed metformin. It's similar but not the same to metformin was prescribed by the doctor. Right? Here, in the first one, the doctor is the subject, prescribed is the verb. Yeah. On the other hand, in the second one, metformin is the subject and prescribed, was prescribed, becomes the verb. In the doctor prescribed metformin, what is the doctor doing? The doctor is prescribing. He is performing the action. He's the one doing the action. On the other hand, when you say metformin was prescribed, what is the subject do? Nothing. The subject is the receiver of the action. For those of you familiar with it, these are what we call our voices. This is what we call the active voice, because the subject is the doer of the action, is actively doing the action. And this is what we call the passive voice, because here the subject is not doing anything, but is rather being done. Which should we prioritize, guys? Action or person in general? Hello. What should we prioritize? What do we prioritize in healthcare? Action or the person? What do we prioritize? The action or the person? It depends. Usually, though, it's the action. We don't care who inserted the IV line. We care that the IV line was inserted, right? So there. So you have to know how to use your active and your passive voices. In addition to genre and groups, in addition to that, you should also have consistent formatting. For example, there are British ways of doing things, and there are American ways of doing things. Like when it comes to dates, the American way would be to do it month, day, year. The British way would be to do it day, month, year. Some spellings vary as well, like center, C-E-N-T-E-R for Americans, C-E-N-T-R-E for British, which is correct. British or American? Well, the correct answer there is either. OET says that you should pick one. If it's American, then everything should be in American spelling and format. If it's British, then everything should be in British format and spelling. It's only going to be a small minus, a small deduction, if you would be inconsistent, but gosh, it's still a deduction. So it's something that you should avoid. And finally, when it comes to language, the only thing to remember there would be your ratio, 1:5. One error that changes meaning is the same weight as 5 errors that do not. You don't have to memorize it. You don't have to master every aspect of grammar, but it's nice for you to know your subject-verb agreements, because as we saw earlier, it does sometimes change the meaning. Your tenses, there are 12 tenses. Your timelines, the sequencing of events must be clear when you are endorsing. Your voices, because as you can see, on the left side, on the right side, sometimes we have to use one over the other. Your conjunctions as well, how you connect the different parts of your the different case notes together. Are there a lot of things that they're asking for? Guys, marami ba? Are they asking for so many things? Are there many things that they are requiring? Yes. Gary Sarmiento Leonardo is asking, would it be more useful if we use passive than active? Sometimes. Sometimes not. It depends. So this is a brief overview of the writing subtest when it comes to OET. What's CSVA? Subject-verb agreement. Pheelyp have a fever. The symptoms has worsened. You have to get that right, because sometimes it changes. At Niner, we have coaching, 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, to help you wherever you are in the planet, whatever time zone you're in. You could write a letter using case notes after attending our lectures, of course. And then our coaches would provide feedback regarding how well you did on these different standards and what areas for improvement you have. It's important that you have feedback, because more often than not, we don't know what we need to improve on. hopefully tonight's brief overview regarding OET speaking is helpful to help you make an informed choice about whether this could be the exam you will take or maybe something else. But at least if you're a healthcare professional, hopefully you can appreciate how close to reality the different criteria are, because these are the things that we do at work in the real world, right? Okay, it's 11:04. We went around 4 minutes out of time. Do you have any questions for me? You're welcome. Any questions for me before we go? Ian, sir, can we use in addition also and lastly in the request for addition? That's not what I'd start with. I would start with it would be appreciated if. Yeah, I answered that question earlier. Gary Sarmiento Leonardo. Would it be more useful if we use passive than active? It depends. Can you use PRC ID instead of passport? No. Passport. But if you do not have a passport, either it's expired or you don't have one yet, you could apply for an authorization letter. It's a letter to authorize you from OET to take the exam. You would have to submit 2 IDs. There's a list of IDs on the website that they accept, like expired passport. And then during the exam date, you bring your authorization letter and the 2 IDs that you use to prove your identity. Can we see an example of the letter, like a practice test? Yeah, we do have those. In Niner. Anything else? MP Light is asking, kindly please, or it would be appreciated. All of those are fine. All of those are fine. Anything else? Going. Gone. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me turn you over again. To your admins.
Okay, that's a very fruitful, fruitful discussion, Sir Pheelyp. By the way, Sir Pheelyp, there's a question, I think, from Gary. I think this will be the last question. Parallel structure could?
I don't understand what that question means.
Okay. Okay, kindly type your question again, Gary. Thank you. So, while waiting, okay. So, Sir Pheelyp, thank you very much for giving us again your time. So, we will see you next week for another topic about OET. So,
I will. Oh, okay.
Yes. I think so.
Okay.
But I'll check the schedule, sir, just to make sure.
Yes,
anyway,
please.
we will just post another banner if we have another discussion.
Certainly.
Okay, so I think that's it. So thank you, Sir Pheelyp.
You're welcome.
Have a great night, everyone. Bye.